Hey guys, Ben here with Oddly Armed, and today we have another disassembly and mechanics video, this time of a Kriss Vector. So let's go ahead, tear into it, and see how the Super V system works. Alright guys, now we can go ahead and get started by popping out the Glock magazine. And then if you look at the receiver, you can see there are 4 separate HK style push pins all across the Vector. Now to start off with, we're just going to remove approximately 3 of them, so they're going to be all the ones that are in this black part of the upper receiver. So we'll go ahead and pop these out. These are non-captive, so don't lose them. There's not any special place to keep these, so just make sure you don't set them aside and just completely forget where they're at. So we'll go ahead and remove those 3 push pins, at which point your lower receiver and upper receiver will just separate just like that. Now, it's not at all necessary to do, but I'm going to go ahead and pop out the stock here too. So with the hinged receiver, this is just held in with one more of those non-captive pins. So I'll go ahead and pop that out. And I'll just press the button there, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and off will pop the classic Vector stock there. Now, looking at the upper receiver itself, this is the non-serialized part. So if you are going to exchange calibers, you actually need multiple tax stamps for your different calibers, unfortunately. But here we have our safety selector, trigger mechanism, all of that is incorporated into the upper itself, as well as the hammer swings down from the upper receiver up here to hit the fire control unit and the bolt and everything, which is in the lower. So there's really not a whole lot here. It is kind of bullpuppish in that it has linkages to the trigger. However, it still manages to have actually a pretty good trigger overall. Now, while I have it disassembled like this, just with the lower receiver with this final push pin in there, you can actually see how the Super V system works. If you pull back on the charging handle, you can see the bolt goes back there and then starts moving downwards towards the end. So you can see this little block here that it rides in. There's 2 rails there that the end of the bolt itself is connected to right there, and we'll show you that in a second here. And that goes downward into this lower V part of the receiver, and then it eventually bottoms out, and there's a buffer here at the bottom. Now, to take this apart, we just have that final pin right here, and usually helps to put a little bit of pressure here on this bottom plate. So we'll go ahead and pop that out. At which point we can go ahead and pull down on it, and then you'll see right here all of the guts are going to come straight out the bottom of the receiver, along with your bolt, which is still going to be riding in these cams here. Now, to remove the bolt itself, you just have to turn it sideways essentially, and then it'll come pop straight outside of this little carrier there. Now, looking at it, there's nothing too crazy. You can see the extractor there, and then there's a little bit of a channel for the ejector. However, the hammer comes down from above, like I showed you in the upper receiver, and your firing pins in there. You don't really need to remove that at all, but it also has these 2 round sections here, which ride in these cam paths, these rails here. And that's what allows it to kind of articulate and give that Super V motion. Now here, this is your carrier, and at the bottom there's a little rubber buffer. And what that does, as you can see here, our bottom plate, which is at the bottom of the receiver, and then we have our spring here. That's going to compress, and then eventually this buffer is going to bottom out against that bottom plate. And that's where that recoil essentially transfer is going to happen to the bottom of the receiver, pressing everything down and keeping the recoil in line. And finally, just taking a look inside of the lower receiver itself, you can see the barrel is fixed in there, as well as our charging handle is going to be on the side here, and there's a little return spring that compresses to the front there. And looking in there, we have our chamber as well as a fixed ejector. Nothing really too crazy. You can see that these are actually polymer side panels essentially on a steel cast or like cage or chassis underneath. So you can see the rails that all the bolt and the internal components right in there, but there's really nothing too crazy to actually see on the receiver itself. Alright guys, and there's a Kriss Vector fully disassembled, and as you can see, for being a little bit of a complicated firearm, it actually comes out in only a couple of components. But thank you guys for checking out the video. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I also started up a Patreon, so if you feel like contributing to my ammo costs, I would really appreciate it, but it's at no point necessary. So thank you for checking out the video, and there will be more coming out soon.